What's up, Doc? What's up, Doc?
Oh, hello everyone. Sydney St. James. My goodness. I got lost in the moment then, just sitting here nodding my head up and down to the background music. And, well, anyhow, welcome to my show today. We have a very interesting podcast that I'm sure you're going to enjoy. So stick around, listen, and enjoy, and we'll get it started right now. Have you always wanted to publish a book you wrote or are thinking about writing? It's easier than you think. Hello, everyone. Sydney St. James, your host for today, and welcome to the start of Season 3. You know, today I started thinking about changing up a little bit on what I've been writing and maybe summarize the first 2 seasons. And in doing all those podcasts in those first 2 seasons, I had a voicemail tab up by my episodes on the screen when you're first pulling them up that people have left a lot of messages for me or comments on the different broadcasts. And one of the highest number of comments was, "Hey, I've got a book. I wrote it and I want to get it published. How do you do it? Do you have any trouble doing it? Or how do I find an agent?" Oh, they had so many questions. And so what I thought I'd do today is take those questions and try to answer them in my whole career and how I crossed the different boundaries to get where I am today. I've often got questions from these authors or wannabe authors on how to bring their book that they've already written, has been sitting on the computer, to fruition, especially now that I'm tying so many of my podcasts to certain novels that I've written. And a long-lost cousin called me out of the blue the other day and asked me, how hard is it to publish a book they had written on their word processor and has been sitting there for years about the Olympics? This podcast today might be something for you or someone in your family, or even a friend on the Pickleball Court that said they have an excellent idea for a book, like my good friend who could easily write a book about the pharmaceutical industry. A man who I suggest, by the way, you don't try to lob the ball over his head in pickleball. It's nerve-wracking, yes it is, to figure out just how to get a book published for the first time. But it doesn't have to be an alarming prospect. There are so many ways to publish a book, and it's taken me years upon years to figure out just how to do that. So today, I will share what has worked for me and what hasn't worked for me. I'm not trying to sell something here. These aren't sponsors that I'm talking about. I just know that I will go over the ups and downs and give you what I finally settled on. And it works. 100% guaranteed. It will clear up all the stress and search and watch one YouTube after another. So stay tuned and let's kick this thing off. How hard is it really to actually publish a book? Writing a novel for the very first time can be arduous. I began to learn genealogy in the 1970s while still attending Texas A&M University. Today, I'm still learning new things. I studied microfilm ship lists and families from Germany who immigrated to the United States in all of my research. It was amazing how much adversity my family faced in the horse and buggy days, leaving their homeland and coming to the great state of Texas. They were from a small town called Rastedi in Oldenburg, Germany. They sailed out through the North Sea and crossed the Atlantic and came to the shores of Texas near a small town of today called Matagorda, Texas. After a year of researching so many rolls of microfilm in the reserved reading room of the library where Bernice supervised my work and was also the sister of my girlfriend at the time, I started my first chapter of Adversity, Keeping the Faith. Even more challenging, publishing a book can be far more difficult. Nevertheless, it can also be surprisingly easy, even after attempts to do so for 20 years, depending upon what avenue you choose. Don't let you or anyone you know and love having a status as a publishing newbie deter you or any of you. After all, even the most famous authors were in your shoes once. That's right. They really, really were. Yes, Stephen King is one and J.D. Robb is two. Go listen yourself to how they got started on one of their webinar broadcasts. Their story's no different than mine. Persistence and a willingness to do a small amount of research will pay off, along with not giving up. And this podcast will help calm the stress and the confusion associated with you dusting off the pages or pulling up that file on the PC and bringing your first book to fruition. Today, my podcast is for someone who has had a book in their mind for years and has always thought about bringing it up and getting it published, but they never have. You must be interested since you're listening to my podcast today, right? So, I will just get down and cut to the chase. Get you a pencil and a piece of paper, and let's take some notes. I will try to tell you my story on the first of 50 plus novels that I've written. And I will also give you some upfront hints at not making the same mistakes that I made. Now, there are 4 ways to get a book published. And whether or not you can actually get personal advice from someone who has already published, it's wise to go out and do your own homework on options for the very first time authors, or listen to this broadcast. Here are a few of the most commonplace ways to publish a book. One is by being a partner with an agent. Traditionally, this is me, back in the 1970s, a budding author that wanted to publish my book on German immigration. First needed to partner with a literary agent. Once an agent became convinced of my book's quality, that person would take it to the publishers on my behalf. I was finally accepted after 2 years of writing query letters and everybody I possibly could. However, my career and getting married made me pay attention to what put beans and bread on the table, and I never followed through on the novel. This is still a regular practice many years later, especially with big publishing houses. However, it can be a problematic way for beginning authors to break into the industry, and right up front, since I'm telling my story, I gave up entirely, and my first book went on the shelf and gathered dust for many, many years. And this, my friend, is why I am giving you the ins and outs of my struggles, and you can pull your own book off that dusty shelf and not wait for as many years as I did. Here's the difficulty, however. You will require a personal connection to an agent. For instance, if you're in college in a writing program, you may have an instructor with a connection. Or you'll need to send out query letters to agents just like I did. This isn't a foolproof method. However, if they are intrigued, they may request a full manuscript from you. The truth of the situation is that agents are showered with hundreds upon hundreds of query letters every single month. From that large pile, they may select 2 to request a portion of the manuscript. 2. That's right. You didn't hear me wrong. It's kind of like my first novel. After I was finished, my wife read it, who's an avid reader, and she said to go back and write the first chapter and make it more capturing in the first 5 or 6 pages, or people will simply just put the book down. But back to finding that agent. So, how do you get an agent with all that competition that's out there? It's an arduous process, requiring a killer query letter that sells your book in the very first paragraph. Remember, everyone else works on a query letter with a killer paragraph, right? Seriously now, the agent might spend 20 seconds on each letter or less, and they look for reasons to reject it, not reasons to accept it. I just gave up like many of you might have done until 15 years ago. I finally published my first genealogy book. Then, some local history books are still on the shelves now in Columbus, Texas and Eagle Lake, Texas. One's at the Nesbitt Memorial Library and the other's at the Winterman Library, where the archives of the Eagle Lake Headlight are held. Now, on with my real story and why you should have your notebook paper and a pen and writing up a storm. Self-publishing. That's right. Self-publishing an electronic book or a paperback book and even an audiobook. New writers publish their first books every single day thanks to the advent of digital self-publishing. You can too quickly with very little or no upfront cost through miscellaneous online services. This option is favorable for anyone who isn't adamant about working with an agent or an editor. As a result, the editing, formatting, editorial design, marketing are wholly up to you as the author. Until now, this is a complicated and impossible task for first-time authors to undertake. After the dust settles, I'll cut through all the chase and tell you what applications and methods I chose, and I'll tell you why, too. I will also let you know where I wasted my money and help you publish your novel on a shoestring budget. There are many pros to self-publishing your own books versus traditional publishing. Self-publishing will allow you to retain full ownership of your book rights, allowing you to publish the ebook version and the paperback and the hardbound and even the audiobook versions. The self-published author maintains total control. Royalties usually get paid monthly, and the royalty rate is somewhere around 70% versus 10% for a traditionally published book. Let me add some tidbits of information in the production of your very first novel. What I would suggest, if you haven't written one yet, is to create a book outline. It can help you with your character's plotline, order your chapters and storyline, and help you keep track of any changes you may make along the way. Additionally, a book outline can provide a blueprint for setting up your sections and chapters and keeping track of any sources used for nonfiction writers. Your first draft. Write your book using Microsoft Word. That's what I use. Of course, I used to use WordStar and WordPerfect and Samna, and there's so many others, but I finally settled on Microsoft Word, and it's still around and they're still updating it. It's a great program. And don't worry about editing now during this first stage. Just get the material down on the computer. I get up during the middle of the night sometimes when I'm writing a novel and go and sit down at the computer and write. I learned to do this when I was listening to Stephen King's webinars and when he talked about how he came up with ideas for his books. And sometimes he said they came from a nightmare or something that he might be having, and he just runs to the computer as soon as he sees it in his nightmare and starts to jot it down. Another thing to remember is to edit and refine your book. Print out your first draft and painstakingly go through every chapter to clean up typos and refine the content as needed. I would take my manuscript down to Office Max and have them printed out one-sided and double-spaced and bound it for me. It also makes for an excellent proofing copy to give to your spouse or your friends or whoever to edit. This works until you begin to become a prolific writer like me. And I lost all of my family friends who once were my editors, finally. Upload your ebook. Now, I did this during my first dozen novels. Amazon was my exclusive seller of electronic books in the Kindle format. I decided on Amazon because when you look at electronic books, who is the number one person or business in this industry when you want to go out and grab a book and read it on your electronic device? It's a Kindle. It's from Amazon. So I elected to go with Amazon exclusively. I finally realized I was missing so much of the marketplace that reads books on different devices. While it's true, Amazon may have 60 or 70% of the market, I was missing out at least on about 30 to 35% of the marketplace. That's when my phone one day rang, and it was my baby brother John. And I said, "John, how many of my books have you read?" John said, "I haven't read any. I don't read Kindle. I don't have a Kindle." And that made me start to think. And I asked him, "What do you read your books on?" "I read them on the Nook." So then that gave me an idea. So after a dozen or more novels that I had written, I broke away from the exclusivity arrangements that I had with Amazon. And I can tell you right now, it was the greatest thing I'd ever did. As a result, my books are now available worldwide on any reading device one uses to read their books. No longer do I have to just base my books on those who read on the Kindle. Let's go to the fourth method, which I utilize in my book publishing service. Not everyone has the time to tackle a self-publishing project independently. A book publishing service offers the freedom and speed of self-publishing and guides you through that process, providing access to advice, editing services, and more. You're also not limited to just an ebook, as some publishing services can publish both paperback and hardcover books as well. There are, however, upfront costs with this option. Many authors find the costs worthwhile for the service, but looking back, I disagree with this. I used a publisher out of Vancouver, Canada, and another publisher out of New York for my first 6 books that I wrote. And I can tell you, I spent lots of money on all sorts of services that they offered. Today, I bet only a dozen books have sold after the fact. That's right, a dozen that I know of. They disappeared, and I haven't heard from them in absolutely at least a decade. They take your money, give no help other than saying they'll charge $2,000 to get your book in front of people buying. Self-publishing services provide access to a much broader distribution landscape, including getting your book into bookstores and into libraries, which I haven't even mentioned yet. and audio platforms around the world. For example, I recently got a report that my audiobooks are selling in Ireland, Scotland, the Netherlands, and in Norway. Wow, I tell you what, not too bad for somebody who went through a lot of headache before we got to that point. But, oh, yes, I know I have to take a break. I have to give my sponsor a little bit of time to help me keep my lights on in the broadcast, so bear with me, and after 30 seconds, I'll be right back with some great publishing tips for all you beginning authors. Have you heard about Anchor.fm by Spotify? It's the easiest way to make a podcast with everything you need all in one place. Yep, Anchor has the tools that will allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. And best of all, Anchor is totally free. Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. And we're back. That's right. So now for the rest of my story. When entering the world of becoming a published author, it helps to have handy tips ready at the very beginning. Each step of the way towards publication requires due diligence and insight. Whether you seek an agent, an editing service, or a book publishing company, do your research before making your selections, such as listening to my podcast today. Secondly, pace yourself. It is so easy to get so doggone wrapped up in writing or seeking agents that you might just skip out on meals or ignore your spouse, or be sure to keep a healthy lifestyle balance. And practice self-care. Writing is an intensive exercise that requires lots and lots of focus and concentration. And there's also a lot of sitting down in front of a computer screen. Take repeated breaks to get the blood pumping in your legs and let your mind rest a little bit. Go outside if the weather's nice and walk down the sidewalk, or go out into the back pasture with your alpacas, or treat yourself to an occasional massage, maybe one from your spouse. And, even more importantly, avoid all those junk snacks to optimize wellness. Another thing I'd like to pass on is to keep your perspective. As focused as you might be about your prospects as a successful writer, it is wise to maintain a healthy mindset. Set realistic expectations on how much you will earn in book royalties. Now, I did say realistic expectations. Don't let a less than stellar review get you down. It did me at first, and I went back, and when you really think about it, they were right. They were talking about how I didn't change the proper tenses to was, to were, or are, or whatever it might be, and I said, how dare them leave such a poor review? I took offense to it, but you can't. Don't take offense to it, not whatsoever. Take a deep breath and go back and look at your work and see what they were talking about. The readers will help you with corrective criticism, although the way they say it sometimes can hurt your feelings. That means polish your product. As alluring as it is to upload your book for sale or send your manuscript to an agent as rapidly as possible, resist the urge to rush the process. I know you've been waiting a long time, but go ahead and take the necessary strides to perfect your writing until your book is genuinely worthy of the money someone's going to plunk down for it. And that is, how much money does it cost to have your first book published? The cost to get your first book published can range quite dramatically, from a minimum of $50 to $5,000. you might consider the following. Self-publishing. While it's true you can publish an electronic book on KDP Amazon for the Kindle for next to nothing, the book that you produce will likely be riddled with typographical errors and grammatical snafus and be very poorly formatted and have an amateur-type looking cover. Now, speaking of covers, I don't mean to scare you off here, but to create a professional cover, high quality, for a self-published book, you probably need a budget of $2,000 or even up to $3,500 for editing, formatting, cover professional design services, and so on. Or take advantages of my recommendations and get so much for free in only a few things that will help marketing, sales, and success that cost no more than a couple of $100 at the most. Traditional publisher. That's what I'd like to talk about next. If you're considering the traditional publishing route, you'll have minimal upfront expenses, but can plan on spending a significant amount of money, usually thousands of dollars, on marketing the book and earning a much lower royalty. Those that prefer to have a publishing company take the reins will typically spend about $3,000 on an average for editing, for their cover design, and for proofreading professional services. There are a bunch out there that will take your money, oh, gladly. But my recommendation to you today is, from so much trial and error that I went through and so much money that I spent, try my method and save a boatload of cash. So the very best way to publish your first book for first-time author actually depends on you, but now, as I said before, I'm going to cut to the chase. I'm about to tell you, after all my trials and errors, what I finally feel like I settled on. There are many answers to the question of how to get that book published for that first time, and what I have to say will bypass the many responses I received on my prior podcast and what I finally settled for on my subsequent 49 novels. For about 5 or 6 years or so, and I've told you this before, I self-published with Amazon exclusively because they are the king of ebooks, right? It was a great relationship, and I have nothing to say negatively about them. They're a good company. However, people and fans said they only read books on the Nook, or they buy books from Kobo, from Walmart, or from many other different sources I never even heard of before. So my primary reason when I first began, well, it still is, writing is for fun. I just have fun writing because I learned so much. However, after my Lincoln assassination series did not sell to my expectations, I began writing in different genres. Plus, I changed after 5 years by taking all of my books off of Amazon. I then went with a trial run with a company that called themselves Draft to Digital. Now, they were still in their beta development at the time. After that, I republished to dozens of storefronts around the globe. Now, if you're someone who has gotten this far listening to my broadcast, and you're still out there, and you're still listening, one thing that happened when I did this was losing all of my reviews. That's why I caution you up front. If you choose my method, this will not happen to you. And when you lose all your reviews, so you look like an unlistened to or unread author. So as a result, I did. I looked like a newbie out there, which has probably hurt my book sales, but no matter. Not so much that now I am selling to dozens of bookstores worldwide, including Barnes & Noble and Walmart and other bookstores that I can't even pronounce their names. In addition, my audiobooks. Yes, the audiobooks have taken off like hotcakes. And that doesn't cost you very much if you decide to go that route. And I'm going to talk a little bit about it, other than maybe a USB microphone that you can buy for $65 or $70, and you're off and running. But I'll talk about that more in just a little bit. Let's go back to Draft to Digital. The beauty of Draft to Digital, that's the word draft and the number 2 and then digital.com, is that they have no upfront charges for any of their services. Formatting your book, conversion of your book, distribution of your book, and they keep a track of your sales. They do make a percentage for what they're doing for you on each of your books, and don't get paid unless you get paid. So, most importantly, it doesn't cost you a single penny up front. The short answer is that, and I'm going to call them D2D in the future, D2D's fee is approximately 10% of the list price you yourself set for your book. That means most bookstores take about 30%. Draft to Digital gets their 10%, and you keep an average of 60% of the list price of your electronic book. For print books, you earn about 45% of your paperback list price minus the print cost. Again, no upfront money. The long answer is each store has its own specific policies and taxes specific to your location. They inform you on the page where you set your price. Now, Draft to Digital gives estimated royalties based on your list price based on a by-store basis. If you adjust your list price, these estimated royalties will update live on your website to show you the best estimate of your take-home pay for each sale you might make at each specific store. Okay, let's go ahead and get down to the meat of things. Let's start with Draft to Digital. What is it that you require to join Draft to Digital so you can make that first bet? It's free to make an account at Draft to Digital. All you need to do is sign up as your name and an email address that you can check regularly. They will keep the name on your account separate from any pen names you use when writing your book. Take me as an example. My pen name is Sidney St. James, and my real name I keep separate from my book writing, and they'll do that for you as well. And, as I said before, as you're doing this, there's no upfront cost to using Draft to Digital. Now, you may wonder, can they really turn my manuscript into a book? The answer is yes. Draft to Digital offers ebook and paperback publishing services. If you have your story or your manuscript, D2D can convert your work into an electronic book or a print-on-demand book, which is a paperback. And that paperback is also called POD, by the way. And I mention that because my very first book I ever wrote, I had it published, and to save money, I took it to Office Max and made 100 copies of the book. And that very first book, I had no idea about the industry, sold maybe a dozen copies. And I ended up with 90 paperback books sitting in my closet gathering dust that probably never sold. No, they do not offer editing, however, or marketing services, but their production and distribution of your book outweigh all other services. For example, I have friends who live in Scotland and Australia, and they've bought my books off their shelves over there as well. And that's thanks to Draft to Digital distributing my books to all these places around the world. As a self-published author, You are the publisher of your own books, and you keep the intellectual property rights of your writing. You control when and where D2D sends your book. For me, it is Bebop Publishing Group, and also my other publishing group is called the Bebop Publishing Audio Group for books and audiobooks. I disclose this on all my copyright pages. Now, what files does Draft2Digital work with? Well, the most popular file format authors upload is a Word document. It once was WordPerfect, and once WordStar, and once Samna. It's okay to upload your book in a doc or a docx file format because Draft2Digital will convert your document into an ebook or print book format. Anything Word can read, D2D can read also. Now, talk about formatting freedom. When you write your manuscript, D2D's goal is to support your writing without you having to worry about formatting. Therefore, they accept a variety of documental formatting styles and don't have any one particular style guide. If you need direction, creating a simple style that will convert beautifully every time, do two things. You can skip right over the title page, you can skip over the copyright page and even the dedication page and any biographical pages. Then you only have to upload your story. And mark each chapter or page break with something distinctive and be sure to be consistent. Also, insert a page break at the end of the chapter and the beginning of a new chapter heading on the next page. Make new chapter names centered in bold or in larger font, or you can use a heading style of some sort. The important part is to do the same thing to each chapter title so D2D's system can learn your style. I try to keep a chapter to not more than about 20 pages, by the way, and this is just an only rule of thumb for me. Out of all the service companies that I'll be speaking to you today about, Draft2Digital is by far best in replying to any questions you have, and a support person will help you, not just shoot you a canned reply like so many other companies out there. I will give them definitely 5-star support in helping you resolve any issue you might have. There's not one question you can ask them that they'll come back and say, oh my goodness, that's a stupid question. They answer it and they help you. And if you don't feel like the answer is full enough of what you want, write them back and they'll answer it in a different way. But they're always there to help you, and they're good. And let me tell you, when you're trying to publish a book, this is very, very important from your service company. And I promise you, when you first start, you will get lost. But don't fret. Write to them, and they'll get back quickly, and I mean quickly, with an answer, and one that you can really count on. Well, that does it for setting up the account for the production of your place where your ebook gets put together in ebook and paperback. Now, let's go over to tips about the production of your book. Keep in mind that I've tried many apps and software programs to help me with my writing and audiobooks. These are the most user-friendly and best that I found. When I first began writing, I edited my novels myself. I couldn't afford the outrageous fees and thought I did a good job. However, after my first 6 or 7 novels, I got reviews that said people enjoyed my story, but it was interrupted by so many grammatical errors. What? How can that be? My brothers edited it. My daughters edited it. My goodness, I had friends that edited it. How can that be? So, I began looking at editing program. I found a program called Autocrit.com. It's good. I ran it on the 6 books and republished them. I did 10 more books. But wait, the same thing kept coming back in my reviews. grammar errors were still there. You might like it, but it helped with many areas of grammar mistakes, just not the comprehensive way another program that I found worked. So, after my first 25 novels, I discovered a program called Grammarly. It is by far the best editing program I've ever found. Now get this. I went back to a Western book I wrote, Sam Bass and His Horse Marines. It was one that I got a review on about tenses were changing here and tenses were changing there, and I'd gone through it with AutoCrypt, and AutoCrypt is good. I don't take anything away from it, so definitely check it out. But the one I finally decided on was Grammarly. And I edited by hand, and then I edited, of course, as I said, with AutoCrypt. But I put the novel through the first time I tried Grammarly. Lo and behold, now you're not going to believe this, on the entire novel, I found 1,865 grammar errors. Ouch! Now, I must admit, a lot of those were just like commas, which means commas are optional. They could be used or not used. It didn't make any difference one way or the other, but still, all in all, however, 1,865, and there were some serious grammar mistakes in there that Grammarly caught. They also give you ways to rewrite a sentence to make it flow better, and they bring that to your attention, but you get to choose if you want to take them up on their suggestion. So what can I say? The program is spectacular in helping clean up all of my grammar. I swear by it now. And it has an excellent plagiarism tool that will help you clean up your sentences to avoid any plagiarism you might have in the document. And with so many books out there available on the internet, every single word is documented. Now, you don't mean to do plagiarism, but when you write a book, there's so many different sentences that pop up that somebody else has used or the way they said it, but it still helps you clear up the plagiarism if you want to, and I do. I like to keep my plagiarism down to less than 1% on a book. Now I'd like to talk about one final program that I use, which is a core program. It is called findawayvoices.com. This is the program where you cut your audio version of the book. You might ask why I'm putting that into my podcast today. It is the best way to correct the grammar errors that Grammarly misses. This program is the same as Draft to Digital, except it is for producing your audio version of the book. I need to note, since I began writing, the ebooks have outsold the paperback books 10-1. Now, audiobooks are outselling the ebooks by almost that same amount. Younger people just snap in their earplugs and listen to the books in the car while traveling or down at the park on their morning jogging run. I bring this up now because I take my ebook manuscript and have it on the screen and read it to produce the audiobook. I can't tell you how many THEIR and THERE or her or here, where the A's been put in her, or other ways to say something that I catch when I read my audiobook. So that's usually my final edit, is in the production of the audiobook. This is usually my final edit, and I end up with an ebook, a paperback book, and an audiobook clear of most grammar errors. And that, of course, is a key word that I said just then. Most grammar errors. I don't care how much grammar checking you do, you're still going to have words that get away from you as far as grammar mistakes. But your entire document is not riddled with mistakes like I was talking about at the very beginning of this broadcast. There will always be those words that sneak by. I know that I mentioned earlier that was the last program I was going to talk to you about was Find Away Voices, but Find Away Voices, when you're talking into your microphone, it has to go into a program that helps you record the audio. So I may have told you that was the last program, but there is one more, and that is called Audacity. You will need it to produce your audiobook. And again, remember, I have tried them all, and I'm telling you, the ones that won out overall are the ones I've spoken about in this program right here, Audacity. Again, it is free. It is the program that I use to produce the Sidney St. James Show, the one you're listening to now, a podcast heard around the world. But my suggestion is to grab and use this app, but go to YouTube to watch a tutorial on using Audacity. I will tell you that there are 100 ways to adjust your voice and clean up the sound, but the main ones I deal with are noise reduction, low and high filter corrections, compression, and normalization. If I use music, I use a fade out on music in the background at the end, or a fade in on the music at the beginning of my story. But Audacity, all in all, is the best program that I have found to use. And now, my last topic before ending my podcast today is about advertising, marketing, and cover design for your ebook, your paperback, and your audiobooks. By far, the best program that I have found and that I use is called bookbrush.com. Again, I'm not getting paid for mentioning these companies. My main go-to program is to do all of my graphics for my social pages, my covers for my books, for my ebooks, and for my paperback books, and all the graphics that I use for podcast pages for each episode of my show. I'm not going into how to use it, but a YouTube channel describing the program will be beneficial. Again, it is called bookbrush.com. My only words for this program are that it is fantastic. However, like Grammarly, it will cost you an annual fee of $100 or so. But my goodness, you design your first book cover and you just saved yourself probably $1,800 on that very first book cover. So it's well worth the money. If you're just doing one book for now, then just get a 1-month subscription and do whatever is necessary for your cover art. If you want to market your book and our books on social media and elsewhere, then bookbrush.com cannot be beaten. I even use BookBrush to graphically sell my books in a series or even create a box set. It looks good out there when people are browsing for my books. So to be truthful, in one regard, I do have a sponsor of my programs that help me pay the bills around the broadcast studio. So they do, in fact, pay me to talk about them. One is Anchor.fm. However, the rest of them, not being paid a cent, I just want to let you know, these are the best ones that I suggest for book publishing, podcast publishing, and just help you with your everyday writing. One is draft2digital.com. The next is Grammarly.com. Then findawayvoices.com, Audacity.com, and lastly, bookbrush.com. And may I say that if you are deciding who to use for the creation of your podcast, which helps promote all your writing and making money at the same time, I chose Anchor.fm. I first started with them and went elsewhere. I believe it was to Buzzsprout. And then I found that no one else offers the best in cleaning up the audio, adding music to the background, having sound clips, everything you need to make your podcast sound professional. These words I'm saying now are free because I really think I have found the best partner in my podcast production for now. But I only give them 2 or 3 stars on customer service support. I never can get help with a problem and always receive the canned response. But I know I must figure things out myself to use what I think is the best production tool for hosting my podcast in the industry. So, I have stripped 100 apps out of this broadcast today over the last 15 years and have given you a shortcut to help you produce your own novels, advertise, market, and produce a successful and fun podcast. I hope all this works for you as it has for me. So, until the next episode, which I believe is coming up will be the special Easter series of my broadcast, I'd like to thank you for listening. And until later, see you later, alligator.
Well, that does it for another episode on the Sidney St. James Show. I want to thank everyone for listening and everyone for dropping by today. Also, I'd like to ask you, if you haven't already done so, be sure to click the follow button. Leave a short review with maybe, kind words, and tell your friends about the Sidney St. James Show, and share the show with anyone that you think might like the show. The more, the merrier, and maybe by the end of this year, our goal is to have 100,000 listeners for the Sidney St. James Show, and I want you part of that listening group. Until the next great episode from the Sidney St. James Show, again, thank you very much from me, Sidney St. James.